Hello, welcome to QA tutorials. In this video, we will talk about Selenium locators and what are various locator strategies that are available in Selenium. So in order to find elements on the web page, we need to use one of the locator strategies to identify the elements on the web page. Right? So we saw some examples before, like using ID and name. So in this video, I will explain all the different locator strategies available and how to use them, right? So if you see the different locator strategies, we can use class name as a locator strategy. Class name operator is nothing but a class attribute to identify an object. If there is any class attribute on the HTML page element, you can use that class name as a locator strategy to identify the element. Right? Or you can use the CssSelector. So there are different ways you can use CssSelectors to create styles to identify the elements. So I will show a couple of the CssSelector strategies. Then you can use the ID of the attribute of the HTML element to identify the element. Then if you have hyperlinks on the web page, you can use the LinkText. Right, there is a hyperlink. You can use the text to identify the element on the page. Similarly, so if you have a name attribute, you can use that. You can also use partial link test to identify the element. You can also use the tag name to identify the element, and Xpath. Right, Xpath is a query language for the XML document. So we can use the same to identify the web elements on the page. Right, so we have like around 8 different ways to identify this. So we're going to use one by one. I will show you one by one how to use those strategies to identify the elements on the page and explain it clearly. Right, so we want to use this automation page which we are using practice form for our test. So let's go into the code and let's get started. Right, I just created a blank page, blank test case, where we initializing the cron driver and opening the page and closing the browser. So let us run this first before we get started with the locator strategies. So it's opening the browser, Chrome browser, so opening the URL and closing it. This is done. So now if you see the let's look at our first strategy, say ID, right? So I think you probably know about the ID strategy. We inspect the element, right? We are looking at the name, text, ID attribute has a value name, right? So we can use this to identify the name element, right? Let's try that. So basically, we're going to do driver dot find element by dot ID. We're going to use the ID string, text string, so that is basically name. So because this is a text element, we want to send keys, type some name. Close the quotes. So basically we are using the ID strategy to identify the element on the page. Now if you run, it will type into this name field with the text as Phillips. Let's try it and see. So you can see that it's very quick. It found the type Phillips and closed the browser. Right, now what is our next strategy? is by name attribute, right? Let us see if we have anything with name attribute. Okay, let's see if we have anything that has so this one has class, ID, type, and a phone number. Let's see if we have something with a name attribute. So I think all these elements has ID. Let's see the submit button. So see, submit button has a name attribute. Name equal to submit, right? So we can use the name attribute to identify the element, right? This is the name attribute, right? So let's see the submit button. So the same thing. We would find element by we are using name, right? So what is the name here? Name equal to submit, but that is the string. So we will use submit button. So this is basically a button to do dot click, right? So that is a strategy used for name attribute. So then, right, we can try this, we can run it, it will find the element, right? So let's see the next strategy. The class name attribute. So for class name, so we can use this button dot primary class equal to form control. So it's going to find multiple elements. So we'll see something which has unique element, right? So we're going to use the class. So if you see the drop down has a class custom select, because this drop down we have only one, so it will be unique. So we're going to use the dot custom select as a class name, right? So that is the class name attribute. We're going to use the class attribute to identify the element. So this will select the drop down, right? So we're going to see that it's the same way. Find element by so all these are methods for. So this is custom select. We're going to do dot click. So this will select the drop down, right? This is the class name strategy, right? So this is 3. Let's run this and see if this is working. So I can also add some delay so that you can see, put some weight. So I added the sleep command so that you can see what is happening while the application is running. So let's run it and see. So you can see the action clearly now. So the first it will select the name, type something on the name, right? Then it will go to submit button, then it will go to the drop down. Right? So type down the name, then submit button, then drop down, right? So that is the action. So we got 3 locator strategies. One is by ID, by name, and by class name. So let us see what is next. Right, let's see this LinkText, right? Let us identify links on this page. So we have a link here for the email. So we can find any of this full text, right? So we can identify the text. So there are 2 ways to do this. We can do the full text or we can do the partial text. Let's try the full text first. So let's select this, copy text. So we're going to do link test. This time driver dot find element by dot link text. Okay. So the string, so we copy it. Right. So this is the element. So we can do get text. So just print this string, right? String equal. We'll take a print out of it just to see that it's getting that element. Element by link text. Right. So let's run this and see. So once it selects the element, it will print the text of the element. Okay. Let's run it. See, we got the link text, right? That is by link test. Then we can do the partial as well. So if we have to do partial link test, you can put only part of the element. Say partial link test, partial link test. So we can do this. Only put part of the word, and the by method will change it to partial link test. So got it, right? So this is a partial link test. We'll run it. So this is already partial text. Partial text, okay. Let us see what else is there. Tag name, Xpath. Yes, let's use the tag name one, right? Let's see if you want to do the tag name. You can do this tag, right? A tag, right? We can do this by tag name as well. Let's try that. So this time we're going to use the tag name. We'll find element by dot tag name into the A tag link. Tag name. Right, so this is the tag name test. So basically we are selecting the same link by using full text, partial text, or tag name. So let's see this and see how it works. So we can also put delays so you can see what's happening, and it will come out. Right, it will print out anyway, so we don't need the delays. Right, so if you understand how this locator strategy works, it's very easy. Okay, so we have to see this tag name. A didn't print anything, so maybe we have some more tags like that. There's some other tags, I think. So we're going to do tag name. Only have some other tags. So let's use tag name, right? This is the label. We'll probably take the label font, the label tag, right? So just take the label tag and print it, right? Just to test the strategy. Take label and try this. Right, so it got the name right. That's what is here, the text, right? So it got the name. So that is how you do the tag name locator strategy. Then we have the Xpath and CssSelector. So Xpath, you can as well basically use Xpath, say for mobile number. Right here, this is the input. So we're going to copy the Xpath. Right, now we will do the Xpath method. So let's copy this Xpath. Then we will do driver.find find element by Xpath. Then we just took the Xpath for the XL dot. So this is the phone number. So we will put it in the quotes. Now send case. Okay, 1 minute. Let me see this expression. Okay, do single quote here. Let's do single quotes for this. Send case. So we'll send some phone number, right? So this is the Xpath, right? Xpath has the attribute, value, and also the tag, which tag we want to select. I will discuss about the Xpath selectors in the next video in more detail. So for now, we can get the Xpath going into the inspect element and copy the Xpath, right? That is the Xpath method. So that will select the phone number. So we're going to add some delay here so that you can see the phone number works. Then what is left is the CssSelector. Let's try the CssSelector for the email address, right? So we can copy the selector, right? We want to use the CssSelector now /email, right? So now we're going to do the CssSelector. Why not CSS? And what is your selector string? #email, right? So this is the ID of the element using CssSelector. So if you're not familiar with CssSelector, you can go through the web tutorials on CssSelectors@b.com. Right, so now we are selecting my CssSelector. Right, so we can basically go to the inspect, you can highlight the element, copy and copy the selector. Right, so this will give the CssSelector, and also get Xpath by copying Xpath. You can get full Xpath, you can do JS path, copy element. So all these options are there in the inspect window. So let's see how this works. Right, selected name, submit button, drop down, LinkText, then phone number, email. Right, so we saw the different ways to select elements on the web page using Selenium Locators. So now we got different variations. What are the some of the things we need to remember while identifying the selectors? Right, there are a couple of things we need to remember, so that we don't break the scripts by using wrong values. The first thing is, don't use dynamic attribute values to locate elements. Right, so the most of the elements here are static elements where these values are constant. But if you use something like dynamic elements, like say which is generated each time you refresh the page, that will break the script. Right, so don't try to use the dynamic elements. And most of the time, if there is an ID and name, that takes precedence over other locators. Right, we have different locators, but if we can find the ID of the element or name attribute of the element, use that ID and name, because those are unique, and that is a faster way to access the elements, instead of using either Xpath or other type of strategies. Right, so if you find ID and name, give preference to that. So while using locator, make sure your locator points precisely to the required elements. Don't say when you are using locators, make sure it is only selecting the particular element that you are testing. Right, so sometimes locators may return multiple elements, so see that you are uniquely identifying the element on the page. Right, don't use auto-generated elements on the web page because they keep on changing. So never use locators to locate auto-generated elements. While working with Xpath or CssSelector, one should avoid directly using the one generated by Chrome tools. Right, like we copied these element directly using copy Xpath and all. So sometimes this may not give proper efficient Xpath or CssSelector. So you have to see that once you use that, you can modify that path and see that it is properly working in your script. Right, so for simple elements it's good, but for something longer elements, this Xpath from inspect tool may be incorrect, or it may give like multiple elements. So you should make sure you test your script and see that you are selecting the correct element for your test. So these are some of the best practices for Selenium locators. I hope you got good understanding of how to use the Selenium locators and what are the different locator strategies available. And if you have any questions, please put it in the comment section. I will reply to your questions as soon as possible. If you like this video, click on the like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.